Hey everyone, welcome back to Crime Weekly News. I'm Derek Levasseur.
And I'm Stephanie Harlow.
And we're here with another episode this week. Some big breaking news this week. I'm sure almost everyone who's watching right now or listening knows about this already, but we're going to cover it. We have to. Real quick, little plug here for those of you who already seen on social media. New show coming out from me, Detective Perspective. I put it on Instagram. I'll have more on that on this week of Crime Weekly. I'm not going to say anything more tonight, but I will say there's going to be something that's just for you guys. You'll be the first to hear or see it. So let's get into it. For more than a decade, several unsolved murders terrified women and confused law enforcement on Long Island's South Shore. Investigators found 11 sets of human remains. Authorities announced a major breakthrough this week, charging Manhattan architect 59-year-old Rex Heuermann in connection with 3 of these women. There's a lot to go over here, a lot to unpack. Probably not something that we can do in a Crime Weekly News, but we're going to give you the overview as we normally do. There's a lot of facts that are already coming out about this, even as we speak. So Stephanie's going to give you the latest download.
Yeah, so we're going to just do a quick overview in case anybody is not familiar. I'll give you a little bit of a timeline. This kind of started in 2010, in December of 2010. On December 11th, authorities found the first set of remains. And these remains belonged to 25-year-old Melissa Bartholomew, and her body was found in bushes along an isolated strip of waterfront property on Gilgo Beach, which is on Long Island. And the police actually found Melissa when they were searching for another missing woman, 23-year-old Shanann Gilbert from Jersey City, New Jersey, who'd been missing since May of 2010. 2 days later, police found the remains of 3 more women, Maureen Brainard Barnes, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman. They were also found across a half-mile stretch on Gilgo Beach. Now, Melissa, Maureen, Amber, and Megan had all worked as escorts who advertised on Craigslist, and they'd all last been seen between July of 2007 and September of 2010. They have become known as the Gilgo Four. On March 29th, 2011, the partial skeletal remains of Jessica Taylor were discovered several miles east of where the bodies of the Gilgo Four were found. And on April 14th, 2011, 3 more sets of remains were found on a stretch of Ocean Parkway in Suffolk County near the beach. A female toddler, an unidentified Asian male, and then a woman who initially was unidentified, but later she was identified as 24-year-old Valerie Mack from Philadelphia. She had actually gone missing 2 decades earlier. 1 week later, 2 additional sets of remains were found in Nassau County, about 40 miles east of New York City, and one of these bodies was identified as the mother of the toddler who'd been found the week prior, and they identified her as the mother through DNA analysis. And then December 2011, Shanann Gilbert, who was the original woman they were looking for when they found the first set of remains, she was found in the wooded marshes of Suffolk County's Oak Beach, about 9 miles from where the other 10 sets of human remains were found. So there's some people who believe all of these victims are connected. There's some people who believe that only the Gilgo Four are connected, but either way, in 2022, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison formed a multi-agency task force to investigate the Gilgo Beach killings. And it was March 14th, 2022, when Rex Heuermann was first mentioned as a possible suspect, and investigators put him under surveillance. They put him and his family under surveillance, and they actually went through his garbage. They started taking things out, including discarded pizza crusts, in order to get DNA samples. And Rex had a lot of things that sort of connected him to being, the Long Island serial killer. He matched a witness's physical description. He lived close to the Long Island cell site. So you're going to find out that Rex, or the Long Island serial killer, allegedly Rex, made some calls, not only with the victims' phones, but to the victims' family members. And so he lived close to the Long Island cell site, and he also worked near the New York City cell sites where other calls had been captured. His personal cell phone and credit card billing records revealed multiple times where he was in the general location of burner phones, which law enforcement said that he had on him at the time of these killings, and he used the phones to call 3 victims in order to hire them as escorts. And also, he used 2 of the victims' cell phones to check voicemails and then to also make taunting calls to their families afterwards. Rex's computer revealed that he had searched the internet at least 200 times for details about the investigation, and he'd also compulsively searched for photos of the victims and their family members. In January of 2023, law enforcement got a complete sample of his DNA from that pizza crust. They matched it to a male hair found in the bottom of a burlap bag one of the victims had been placed in. And they also found hair believed to be Rex's wife, or belonged to Rex's wife, found on or near 3 of the murder victims. And Rex's home was about 25 minutes from where the 11 sets of human remains were found. So at this point, he's only been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder in the killings of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. Like I said, he allegedly made calls to the victims' family members. And according to former FBI profiler Mary Ellen Toole, he did this because he wanted to hear the fear in their voices. And when he was talking to one of the victims' 16-year-old sisters, O'Toole believes that Rex Heuermann sort of got off on it sexually. He allegedly used Melissa Bartholomew's phone to call her family on July 17th, July 23rd, August 5th, August 19th, August 26th, 2009. And he apparently told them in detail how he had sexually assaulted and killed her. I believe one of these calls he said, "Oh, do you think you're going to see Melissa again?" And then he said, "No, you're not, because I murdered her." So basically just terrible things. But his lawyer, Michael Brown, has said that the evidence is extremely circumstantial, and Rex has repeatedly said he did not do this while crying, and he's pleading not guilty to all charges. So, I mean, for the sake of just being above board, he is innocent until proven guilty. This is all alleged, but yeah, I think he's good for it.
Yeah, it sounds like it on the surface, right? It really does. And for anybody who rolls their eyes, we have to do that. If we want to have a show, we have to do that. You always have to. You never know what's going to play out in the court systems. As we've seen today, actually, I was just seeing the whole update with Alyssa's attorney, Sarah's sister. That's just insane. And maybe we're going to leave that story for her, but you just never know. And you and I have talked off record about cases that I did, some on Breaking Homicide, where I was on a Zoom listening to the court hearing from the judge and astounded at what I heard and the findings they came to and how they rationalize it. It's just insane. You never know. But that being the case with this, yeah, it looks like they've built a solid case against him for at least 3 of these so far. And now that they've got search warrants, they're going through his childhood home. They're going to try to build a case for the others.
And they found a bunch of creepy ass stuff, like a childlike life-size doll. I think something like over 200 guns, which is twice the amount that he actually had permits for. Like a ton of stuff. And they've said that investigators have carried out mountains of evidence from his cluttered home. And they're saying they're looking for trophies from these victims, like earrings, locks of hair, which, I mean, considering this dude allegedly called the victims' family members to torture them, I absolutely believe that he probably has them. Yeah,
I'm with you. And this case reminds me of a case I did, Honolulu Strangler. There's an individual who he felt was good for this, and something that's familiar in this case, similar situation, the time in which these murders would have occurred, you think, oh, if this person had a wife and kids, how did he pull all this off? And they didn't know. Well, from what I was hearing and what I was reading, during the time when these murders would have occurred, the wife and the children weren't around.
Yeah, out of the country at some points, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And the same thing was a situation with the Honolulu Strangler, the guy that we think was involved. His family was over in California. He was working over in Honolulu. And when these murders would have occurred, it just happens to line up with the fact that the family wasn't in Hawaii at the time. So similar circumstances. We'll see how it works out. I've seen a lot of people reporting on it today. There were some things. I'll be good. But there was some conversations that Stephanie and I had today where I see certain people talking about it. And just to put it lightly, they're inferring like they had something to do with it being solved. From what it looks like to me, investigators may have known about Rex for a very long time, but the suspected he's on a list. But the reality is, and it kind of goes back to the case that I was just talking about with Alyssa's attorney. It's one of those situations where when you charge someone, you only get one shot at it once you go to court. And even if you know it's the guy, if you don't have your case sewn up and he gets found not guilty, that's it. So I know that's hard for some people to hear, but you really want to dot your I's and you want to cross your T's and make sure that when you go after this guy, you truly believe that you've done everything you can and there's nothing more to gather, even if it's going to take time. And with this situation, they might have had enough circumstantially to maybe charge him, but they really wanted to bring it full circle. And it's something as trivial as pizza crust, right? That's what did it. And as soon as they had that in January, we're only in July. That moved pretty fast, considering how long that process can take. I don't know what lab was involved with it. If I had to guess, I would say we're going to find out it's probably Othram. That's that's going to be my guess. But overall, it does take time. And some people were, they had this, they knew about him all along. Maybe, but they probably knew about a few people all along that weren't the guy who they also thought could have been good for it. It wasn't until the confirmation through this DNA that they were able to really solidify and narrow it down to Rex. So overall, good job. I hope that this leads to some convictions, hopefully for all of these women, so that these families can have some, I don't want to say closure, but resolution, answers as to who did this, especially when you're talking about him taunting them on phone calls. And I take a lot of joy in the idea that this may be our guy and he's crying, not because he's sorry, but because he got caught. And he thought he was untouchable.
I don't believe he's crying, honestly.
You think it's just crocodile tears, right? Just kind of faking it.
Because his lawyer was like, he has expressed so many times through tears that he did not do this. Like, bullshit. Like, if he is crying, like you said, it's because he got caught. And he knows he's screwed. And I don't know what this lawyer, defense attorney, Michael J. Brown, maybe Rex needs a new lawyer, because physical evidence like hair found in a burlap sack where one of the victims was, that ain't circumstantial, my friend. I don't know if you know the difference, Michael Brown, between circumstantial and physical evidence, but hair is not circumstantial.
Just to have a DNA match, and I'm sure by now they've done a buccal swab where they've even confirmed it more, not just off the pizza crust where it's like, it's like a 1 in, I don't even know what the odds are, so don't come after me, DNA experts, but it's like 1 in like 30 billion or some jillion like
not
number
just
where
his hair, his wife's hair.
His wife's hair. And then
which means it was probably on him, right?
Right?
I mean, I'm hoping they're not suggesting that his wife was a part. I don't think that they would be, but it could have been on his clothes, right? Like, you know, my hair be falling out constantly. Like, I'm sure I couldn't even commit a crime because my hair would give me away. But like, this isn't circumstantial. This is not a circumstantial case.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it's one of those things where it took a long time. A lot of people have covered it. And sometimes they take longer than others, but the ultimate goal is to catch the person. And I think it goes back to when you see there's YouTube clips about this guy and he's living in a nice neighborhood. I saw a bunch of videos of people who are like camped outside his home.
Yeah.
Like, you just never know who's near you.
He's living in a nice neighborhood, but like there's signs that something's going on because the neighbors were all like, first of all, we ain't never seen this family. Nobody was going in and out. And the house itself on this very nice street is like dilapidated and kind of run down, and it's not being taken care of. So it's almost like you can only hide things inside for so long before they start to like leak onto the outside. And I think that Rex's house is kind of a representation of that. You can only keep your evil and your toxicity inside for so long before it starts to like seep through to the surface.
Yeah, ain't wrong. I mean, especially if he's like probably not a good guy. Obviously, at the when I'm not talking about what he did, but more so just probably like a sloppy guy. Just every other element of his life is chaos. The only thing he can really keep under control is his job, probably. And after that, it's just inside his head. If he's the guy, it's just absolute mess for most of us.
Yeah,
where
looks like he was kind of a hoarder.
Yeah, it's the bare minimum he can do is get his shoes on, get his clothes on each day to go to work. You know, and that's it. That's all he can do. But yeah, there's videos out there of him doing interviews for YouTube videos for other real estate things, and you know, it's something,
architecture,
right? And you architecture, and you don't. You know, so we're quick sometimes to profile in our heads or envision like what's a person like this would look like, and I don't think anyone just looking at this from the outside would have pictured of someone who looks like Rex. And that's the point. I don't
know, man. He kind of looks exactly like how I
you would disagree with me. For the course.
Shannon, put a picture of this dude up.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, there better have been a couple pictures of him up at this point.
Tell me he don't look sketchy and slimy. AF,
well, my thing is like, you know.
You mean like who he was and stuff, like the life he lived and things like that.
Yeah, his whole background,
and most serial killers are like that, you know? Like, look at the Green River Killer and stuff like that. Everyone was like, oh, that dude was the hardest worker ever. He was always on time. Like, he was so quiet and polite. Like, they always seem normal because I think they have to have a level of compartmentalization that many of us cannot understand or comprehend. So they seem to be like squeaky clean to the naked eye, when they have like a battle, like embroiling inside them. But listen to this statement from his lawyer, right? Which kind of goes on what we were just saying. Rex Heuermann is 59 years old with no prior criminal history. He's a college graduate and is a hardworking licensed architect who has his own New York City firm. He's a loving husband to his wife of over 25 years and an involved and dedicated father to his daughter and stepson. He's entered a not guilty plea and has insisted he did not commit these crimes. There's nothing about Mr. Heuermann that would suggest that he's involved in these incidents. And while the government has decided to focus on him despite more significant and stronger leads, we're looking forward to defending him in a court of law before a fair and impartial jury of his peers. Good luck with that. But basically, that's what the lawyer's saying. Like, oh, look at him, college educated, successful businessman, loving husband for over 25 years. Like, I guarantee if you asked his wife, his daughter, and his stepson if Rex is like this upstanding citizen and this like good person behind closed doors and they were being honest, they'd have some stories to tell, honestly.
Oh, I'm sure they would. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's a spectrum. I do think there's some serial killers, or even, it doesn't even have to be a serial killer, just someone who's a bad person, a murderer, whatever it might be, a child molester. On the outside, they can sometimes look polished, or they can sometimes fit the bill. Like I always stress to all of you, you just got to approach everyone with a certain level of skepticism. Doesn't mean you have to be rude or disrespectful, but just understand that there's no template for who these people are. Male, female, white, black, doesn't matter. Could be anyone.
College educated,
a successful business owner, or a guy who lives down the street and is living in a cardboard box. Yeah. Doesn't matter. You don't want to walk through life scared, but this should just drive home the point for everyone at home that you can't judge a book by its cover. You just got to treat everyone the same and be protective of yourself and the people that you care about, because you truly don't know who's living next door to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust anybody, so I'm way ahead of the game.
Facts.
But this is good news, and I agree. I want to touch back on what you said earlier, where I have seen similar things, and people are like, "Oh, they've had this evidence forever." Like, that may be so. Obviously, not forever. That's hyperbolic. That may be so.
I was good today. I bit my tongue. You and I were talking. I bit my tongue. You're like, "Yeah, don't."
And I was like, chill, dude. Usually it's you trying to convince me not to go scorched earth.
I just don't like when people
Monday morning quarterback it.
Yeah, try to take credit for something in hindsight when this was all going on. They didn't call this person out ever. So don't put in the comments who you think I'm talking. I'm never going to say it, but it's one of those things where, like I said, police ultimately were the ones, whatever agencies we find out were involved, they did this, and some may argue they should have done it sooner. Whatever the case may be, that's your opinion. I respect that. But there are going to be certain cases. This is why we do these shows, where you'll have a TV show or a podcast contribute exponentially to the solving of the case or the public pressure that goes on it for someone to do something. But there wasn't pressure applied from the outside for them to go get this DNA sample from this pizza box or the pizza crust. This was done because of their police work. This is what they did. I don't think they were sitting there going, we got to go get some DNA from this guy because, so-and-so just did a show on this or a podcast on it. We got to get on this because the pressure's mounting.
And not that doesn't happen.
It does happen.
It does
That's what I'm saying. It does.
When the police aren't actively like pursuing a case, and the podcast world or the YouTube world, or like armchair detectives or citizen sleuths, whatever you want to call them, have to get involved and start putting pressure and like bringing the heat. That does happen. But I don't think that's what was happening in this case. I don't think that the police were like, we don't care about the Long Island serial killer. We're not trying to find him. I think they were. And I think they were 100%.
There was a whole unit. There was a whole unit for it.
Yeah. And I think they were actively pursuing leads. And when they had leads, they actively pursued on following those leads, which we clearly see. So even if they had some evidence or his DNA or whatever for a couple of years, it wasn't like they were like, oh, we have this DNA and it matches, we're just going to shelve it and not do anything with it. They're pursuing it, but they're trying to do it right, because these 4 people, the Gilgo 4, I mean, he's only being charged with 3 right now. But they do say that there's probably more to come. But these 4 women and these 11 people involved, they deserve justice. They deserve their day in court. And if the evidence isn't collected and processed correctly, if the right steps aren't taken, you have the chance that this person gets away scot-free for everything. And then who wins then? No one. So
Right.
in cases where they're actually like actively doing things, let's just like chill with the criticism.
Yeah.
And let the police do their job when they're doing their job. And when they're not doing their job, then we can speak up and put some heat and, bring the fire or whatever. But that's not, I don't think that's what was happening in this case. I don't know anybody who's like, oh yeah, the police in Suffolk County were just like not caring about
Sitting
the
on
Long
their
Island
ass,
serial
yeah.
killer. Yeah, it's like it's been one of the biggest cases, and they've been actively working on it as far as I'm concerned.
You just never know. I mean, it's so easy to think, oh, they have enough. Just go for it. Just go for it. You, as I said in the beginning of this, court systems, the judicial system never fails to surprise me. And you and I, again, we can talk about it here too, but it's like, you know more about Alyssa's case than I do. And you were like, it seems pretty obvious that the dad did it. But
to me, Michael Turney is guilty as sin. Okay? It couldn't possibly be anybody else. Allegedly, just my opinion.
Right.
And now you have...
He's acquitted. That's it.
You have Alyssa Turney, who I guarantee you was buried somewhere out there in that desert in Arizona, and he knows exactly where she's at, and he'll be the only person who knows where she's at until he dies. You have Sarah, her sister, who's been fighting for her.
Whole reason she got into this true crime thing.
For almost her entire life, okay? And leading up to this, right? Michael Turney finally going to court and having his day in court and facing justice. And to have it all come to nothing. And I mean, they can't throw him up there again.
Double jeopardy,
it's
it's
so
over.
Disappointing. It's so soul crushing. And that's what you'll be faced with. If things aren't done completely correctly. And I mean, I don't even have to say allegedly to say this. The Alyssa Turney case was handled poorly by multiple people right from the beginning. And that's probably why we are where we are right now. Because if evidence had been properly collected and if Michael Turney had been properly pursued in the beginning, maybe we wouldn't be here. So let the police do their job unless they're not, and then we can give them shit.
Yeah. And by the way, just to make sure I'm perfectly clear on this, in that case, with me knowing very minimal about it, seems like anything they were going to get in that case because of how it was processed in the beginning, that's all they were going to get, unless Michael Turney was going to confess to it one day, which clearly he wasn't. So they went forward with the best they had. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because here they could have maybe charged Rex a few years ago with what they had circumstantially. Maybe they could have got it.
Maybe they could have gotten it for one or two victims,
Maybe. But the reality is you go to court, and as the detectives and as the DAs, you may think we got him. And because you rushed it, because you didn't take the time you needed, you get some judge who's a moron or a jury who can't interpret the information the same way that you're relaying it to him, and that guy goes free. So I feel like now, once they got this DNA off the pizza crust, they said, okay, that's it. That's the best we got. We're going to give it our best effort. If this doesn't work out, well, then you know what? It wasn't for lack of effort. So that's why sometimes you got to take a little longer. That's why they did in this one. And we'll listen, all the facts are going to come out. And it's going to make a lot more sense. And I would say, hey,
the stuff they're pulling out of his house, the facts are going to keep coming out. Yeah.
He's in trouble. And there's so much we're talking about digital forensics. We're talking about DNA. There's so much that this guy,
circumstantial evidence, my ass.
Yeah.
Michael
We'll see if he keeps that. We'll see if he keeps that tune in a couple months. But innocent until proven guilty, right?
How do you defend the Long Island serial killer with like a good conscience? Look
Everyone's
at yourself in the
entitled
mirror
to counsel.
Whatever. I know.
I know. Everyone's entitled to counsel. It could be you. It could be me. It's one of those things. I get that. I have no problem with it.
I don't need to hear it, Dad.
I'm just doing it for the commenters.
From an emotional standpoint, how do you defend the Long Island serial killer and look at yourself in the mirror, knowing what he did to these girls, knowing that he called their family member, 16-year-old sister, giving explicit details about how he sexually assaulted her sister? Like, how do you sit there and be like, my client is innocent? Come on, man. I'm just like, listen, I know everybody is entitled to a defense.
Everyone's entitled to a defense. And I think the way the defense attorneys justify it is it's their job. They're not taking it personal. They know what they're there to do. They're there to help him through the process. It's not necessarily something that they believe he didn't do it, but that's their job. That's their responsibility. I don't know if he has a private attorney. I'm assuming he does. He's got some money.
Yeah, it looks like it.
So again, we'll see how it goes. We're
Yeah, because that's what
beating a dead horse
these
here, but-
attorneys are. That's what these attorneys are seeing, right? Like this is going to be a long ass process.
A lot of money.
A lot of money, dude.
And listen, they're going to try to get stuff thrown out, but I think ultimately what this might come down to is them just trying to, subdue whatever penalties.
Try to knock off victims, try to make sure they don't get any
Right.
more added, and try to at least get down maybe the 3 to 1. This dude's going to prison in some capacity.
You can't help yourself. You
I
cannot
really can't.
help yourself.
But that's just my opinion.
Yes. You can't do it. It's like I'm sitting here and I'm sweating. I'm like,
Why?
because when the cease and desist are coming in,
Then we'll
because you-
cease and we'll desist.
yeah, we'll desist. Yeah. Okay. I've said enough. You've said enough for both of us. I think we're good. I mean, evidence-wise, from what we've seen, looks like he's got some explaining to do at minimum. So we'll be watching just like you guys, and maybe at some point, I'm sure it would be a huge undertaking because we're talking about a lot of victims here. That's what makes for Crime Weekly hard for you, because you basically get everyone deserves the equal amount of attention. So that would be a huge undertaking. But when there's an
could do
update,
it.
yeah, we could definitely do it. Now that there's we get the whole picture, we can give that arc to it where we have the beginning, the middle, and hopefully an ending.
And this will go to trial, and we'll get. I mean, just simply from the documents that they put out to arrest him, I was like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a ton. It's going to be a ton.
Yeah.
So we'll keep you guys updated. It might be another Crime Weekly news. It might be a full series. Who knows?
It'd have to be a full series.
We're hoping that everything goes smoothly for the families involved with this. And I'm sure even the ones who weren't necessarily named in this initial arrest, I'm sure they're sitting at home now, those family members, hoping and praying that everything will work out where their loved ones will get their justice as well. So any final words from you, Stephanie Harlow, as you pick your nails with a sharp object?
Sorry,
so fitting.
It's for, just how I'm feeling right now. So for the record, screw the Long Island serial killer and all the guys like him, because what they do is they go after specifically like these escorts and these sex workers and things like that, because they're a vulnerable population, because they're out there and they don't have the protection. And honestly, they consider them less than, and they treat them like that. And this is, and we see it so often. Arthur Shawcross, Green River Killer, Long Island serial killer, all of these serial killers just basically go out and take out their anger and their angst and their insecurities and the fact that they have small penises out on these women for absolutely no reason other than they don't value them as people. And so screw them, and I hope every single one of them fries in hell. All right, I'm all set. Next time
I concur.
we'll see you.
Serial killers are bad. I concur.
That was a great summary.
Yeah, be careful out there. Be safe. Have a good night. We'll see you soon.